This is Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas. I've been doing some machine knitting lessons using the Ultimate Sweater Machine, which is a plastic bed machine. This is a man's scarf that I knitted, and it's in the previous lesson. To match the man's scarf, I have done a hat, and I'm going to make it to go with some of the other scarves. Now, this hat has kind of a nice taper at the top. It doesn't have the gathered up lumpy look that you sometimes get with machine knitted hats, and it has an interesting ribbing method on the bottom. It also has the same little latched up cable detail that I put in the scarf. To do the hat, I have to use most of the needle bed. I'm going to make this 81 needles wide. So I'm from needle number 40 on the right, going all the way over to needle number 41 on the left. I am beginning by putting all of these needles out in hold position, using the green card to do that. And then I'm going to get the cast on hem. I center the cast on hem by putting this dot in the middle of the cast on hem onto the center needle of the bond machine. Then I need to open all of the latches going across before I can put the elastic thread on. I do that with a cut credit card. I just run it along and open the latches. Now I get the elastic thread, and I'm going to lay it in the open latches all the way across. Then I bring the cast on hem down over the elastic thread, and while holding the needles out, I push the cast on hem back so that this elastic thread is behind the needles all the way across. Now I need to put the needles back so that they're in upper working position. Now you can't exactly do this by laying this in because the needle butts are in the way, but you can put it in at an angle like that and use it to measure the depth. I'm going to want key plate 1 for the first row of the cast on. So I've got number 1 in here, and I'll set it down on the bed. And I'm also going to want to use some waste yarn rather than the garment yarn, just for getting cast on. I'm going to feed the yarn in just by putting it right in the notch in the middle of the front of the carriage, and I'll slide across slowly, which puts on my first row of the waste yarn. I'm going to want to knit several rows of waste yarn before I switch to the garment yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and knit several rows with waste yarn just to get an edge on this. The scarf was made with this brand, I love this yarn, in the worsted weight. I've got enough left to make the hat. What I'm going to do is position the skein behind the machine, and I'm going to pull out some slack yarn to get started. I'm still on every other needle, and I'm going to knit one row slowly on this key plate 1, and then a second row. Then I'm going to do something different. What I want to do is go from knitting on every other needle to every needle, and to accomplish that, I am going to bring out these in-between needles, and then I have to make sure that every one of these in-between needles has an open latch. So I'm going to go down the row making sure these latches are all open. Now I need to switch to key plate 2 to do this ribbing. So I just open it and swap it out. So it was cast on with key plate 1, do 2 rows, and switch to key plate 2 to continue with the ribbing. I drop the yarn as I approach the first stitch, and then I'm going to knit 12 rows. I'll start out quite slowly. I need to inspect this first row and make sure that it lays yarn in every hook, because if it doesn't, I fail to open a latch. And it looks good. So I'll draw out some yarn and I'll do 11 more rows. Now that I have my 12 rows knitted above the 2 rows at the bottom that are the every other needle rows, I'm ready to drop stitches and ravel them down to make the ribbing. Now you can do this hat faster if you like by doing a hem, but this is a remarkable ribbing technique, and I think you'll be surprised at how attractive it is. Basically, you rip this down, which you could do by tugging. But I'm picking down this first stitch. And then after it's ripped all the way down, you use the latch tool to reform the stitches. What you do is you take the latch tool and put it behind the bottom 2 stitches, go behind the 3rd, and just put the 3rd stitch on the latch. Bring it down below the first 2, and then come up in front, like that. And pick up the next one, and latch your way on up to the top. I tend to pick out that first stitch on the very end because it's the most difficult stitch to latch up. But then for the next bunch of them, I can just drop them off the needles, and I can pretty much just yank down, yank sideways, and just let them unravel. The second stitch is done the same way that the first stitch is done. I take the latch tool and I put it behind those first 2 bars, and then catch the 3rd bar from the back. Pull straight down, bring it to the front, and then pick up the next bar and the next bar and latch my way on up to the top. This takes a little bit of time, but is well worth it for the wonderful results that you achieve. Finish by hanging it on a hook. So I'm going to go ahead and latch these up all the way across off camera, and then be back to do the next step in the hat. Once I have them latched up all the way across, there's a tendency for all of the needles to come out. I have all of the stitches in the hooks, so I'm just going to move them back into working position since they're all in the hooks. Now I need to change the key plate to key plate number 3. So I'll take out number 2 and drop in number 3, which will give me a larger stitch size for the next part of the hat. And now I simply knit 30 rows.